Thanks for staying up later. Sarah Jessica Parker is back. Now, the last time you were here, L.A. Story had only been out for a short while. We talked about it quite a bit, but it's worth going back to at the start here because a lot of stuff happened because of L.A. Story.
Yes.
You know, you'd been in Equal Justice on TV and Substance of Fire on Broadway and other stage productions that have been well received. But L.A. Story is when people first started connecting the name and the face, right?
Yes, it was a quietly radical change in opportunities for me, and I think perception as far as the industry was concerned, the way that it viewed me, and certainly was, I think, the reason that I was cast in Honeymoon in Vegas. And in fact, I think the last time I was here was the day that Substance had opened at Playwrights Horizons, and we were, you know, I was there with the New York Times, and I think we spoke about it, and things have changed considerably since then, yeah.
And Frank Rich loved this thing in the New York Times, and literally the night before, 60 Minutes had profiled him as this man of menace that people cringe when he walks into the theater.
Well, I have no idea what they're talking about. He's a teddy bear with brilliant taste.
Something I didn't know at that time, though, before L.A. Story, how did you get ready to do the love scene with Steve Martin? How did you prepare yourself?
Well, I had never done a love scene really on film, and certainly had limited experiences on television. And so what I did was I went to, at the time there was coincidentally a lot of films with young people, younger people at that point, doing love scenes, women my age. And so I went to see every possible film with young women my age doing love scenes. And some were quite vulgar and crude, and some were more romantic and sweet. And I would sit in the movie theater for hours endlessly watching these films and trying to see how their potential nervousness had manifested in the scene, because I was so terrified of the thought. It was my first day of shooting with Steve that I was going to have to take his hand and gently put it on my chest.
Right.
I don't know what you can say.
Chest is, I think, safe. That would be safe.
My chest. And so that's what I ended up doing. And of course, my friends at that point weren't even speaking to me because they were like, "Don't bother calling her. She's a neurotic mess." And then what I did was I found my friend Adam, who is he's homosexual, and I felt safe in putting his hand on my chest just to practice once, and he was willing. And once I got past that, then I was fine. And then of course I had to do it with Steve Martin, which was, you know, it was a pleasure.
For both of you, I'm sure.
Well, I'm not certain for him, but for me it was nice. Woo!
Your blood feels great.
I love hotel sheets, and they feel so good against your bare skin.
I'll put your bag in here.
Come here first.
Thanks.
Come here again.
Sandy, your breasts feel weird.
Oh, that's because they're real.
Hey, let me get this shoe off. Oh, my God. All right, now, I should warn you that
What?
I'm old and it might take a little while. Oh, my God, I'm young again!
And what did Adam think of the scene when he finally saw it?
Well, he felt very good about it. He felt that he was instrumental in it being so believable.
Now, fast forward to Honeymoon in Vegas with Nicolas Cage and James Caan. You couldn't exactly play this low-key. Otherwise, you would have been blown right off the screen.
Yes, yeah. And in fact, it was sort of odd. I keep telling people that I have this inclination to be more subtle in my work, and then I realize the work that people are looking at doesn't necessarily indicate that. But I had a good sense that it was important for me to be to step up to the plate on Honeymoon, because both Nick and Jimmy are at least known for creating large, broad caricatures, and their personalities are very charismatic and very, they leave an impression. And I knew that even though my character was based in reality and it was basically a normal woman, she was a school teacher, that it wouldn't suffice to just play it normal, that I had to really grab the reins and play big. And Andy just kept saying to me, Andy Bergman, the director who also wrote it, just kept saying, you know, you just got to be brave and be big, 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 because there's no there's no point in doing it small.
And he actually said, if she spends the weekend with me, you owe me nothing.
Jess,
I am so nauseous.
you don't think this is totally killing me?
You know, I just had this feeling, Jack, when you left, and I sort of talked myself out of it. Something about this.
Okay, listen.
Not right.
Just forget I even mentioned it. There's options.
Like what? Neither of us has any money. God, Jack! I mean, what do you say? He wants me to walk around in her clothes?
That's the way. Hit him.
It wasn't that specific.
How could you put me in this position?
What do you think?
You ever been intimidated on screen?
Endlessly. I didn't have to let you finish the sentence. I'm always intimidated. It's in my life being intimidated. Probably not good. But on screen, yeah. Steve Martin, without question. I really thought that I was very intimidated by Nick because his work was, he's done a lot of smaller, more dark, brutish sort of films. And I told him, I said, you know, I kept thinking that he was thinking about me. Well, what a lightweight. She's like a hostess Twinkie, you know. He was like baklava or something, and I was like a Twinkie. And, you know, I was intimidated by Bette Midler. I'm working with Tim Burton now, and I was petrified of that, you know, and what could possibly go wrong. But what I ended up doing in all these circumstances is I tell my friends that there's a strong possibility that I'll be fired, and that it's okay, that it's a rite of passage, and it happens to everybody. And that way, if I'm fired, because you usually know in a couple days,
right,
that it's okay, and that I won't be shocked, and they won't be shocked, and it won't be so horrifying, and that way I can get through it easier. Because if you're intimidated, it doesn't really serve the material, it doesn't serve the work,
right,
generally speaking. And if I allow myself to totally become victim of that, then I'm sort of screwed, basically. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then the material is not being really served, and so that's why I figure if I tell people there's a potential for being fired, then I'm safe.
You mentioned being intimidated by Bette Midler. Of course, you were in Hocus Pocus with her, but you had also encountered her, whether she realized it or not, many years earlier, right?
Yeah, I think she's aware of it now, but at the time, she was on Broadway when I was doing Annie on Broadway, and actually Linda Ronstadt was also on Broadway at the time doing Pirates of Penzance, and I was with this really wonderful voice teacher I was studying with her named Marge Rivingston, and Bette had her voice lesson before me, and one day I happened to come early to the class, and she let me in, and there was Bette Midler singing away. And what I would do as a result every time after was get there early and go and sit in the kitchen and listen to her. And what I found most extraordinary about it, besides the fact that she was in the other room, which was pretty amazing to me, was that she was singing all sorts of things that one might not imagine her singing. Lots of arias and lots of show tunes, and she has an incredible sense of, she loves music and knows music of all eras. She's not just what, you know, the rock and roll that we used to know, or the great, you know, 50s stuff that she does, but she's a great repertoire, and she was amazing. And then when she would leave, I would do whatever she was doing. You know, if she was doing Italian vocal warm-ups, that's what I would do. And in fact, that's what I did every night before the show. After that, there was this thing called Vakai, which was a book of Italian arias, short, little sweet ones, very short arias, which I guess is redundant. But anyway, and that I would do those. I would lie in the bed as Annie. Before the curtain went up, about 5 minutes, I'd go down there and start singing, you know, Italian vocal warm-ups, hoping to impress somebody.
Would early comers hear it through the curtain?
They might, but there's so much chatter, you know, in the audience that I don't think they heard me. I never had a big, loud voice. A misconception about me, actually. I mean, because I was Annie, people would assume that I don't have a loud voice at all. Was
Andrea McArdle Annie before you?
She was Annie before me, and then I came in the show when she was Annie as an orphan, and then Shelley Bruce played Annie, and I was Shelley's understudy for Annie, and then Shelley left and I took over, so I was the third Annie.
Both Andrea and Shelley had the big voices.
Big Ethel Merman.
Just what I was going to say, like Annie's like a little Ethel Merman.
Exactly, and in fact I think both of them used to sing as audition songs, Sing Johnny One Note, you know, which is a great famous Ethel Merman song, and I never would even attempt it because it was really beyond anything I was capable of doing.
So how did you act it differently? Because that obviously had to be the strength that you went to.
That was my strength. I mean, I'm not saying I was great at it, but that was what I had to rely on, because I could carry a tune, and I had a a good sense of, I had a musical ear, but I felt that my strength was going to be in really selling that this girl wanted a home and a dad and a mom and loved this dog. And you know, my voice grew and got better as time went on, just by virtue of the fact that I was singing every night, but that was never my strength. And when I left the show, I was terribly concerned when I was auditioning for other Broadway shows, or when they'd have me come in, that they would expect this thing and I would just be a big letdown all the time to people. And so I tried to pretend it didn't happen, pretend I was not Annie, and which I felt strange about, because I was very proud to be one of the Annies on Broadway, you know.
Yeah.
That's gonna come out tomorrow, so you gotta hang on till tomorrow. Don't wait and beg. Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, you're always a day away. Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, you're always a day.
Concrete and Products Association. Concrete block homes stand up to the wind.
My granny fell on you, and it was strong. Your riches and lives have all been cursed because of all the witches working, and the worst.
What do you think went wrong with Hocus Pocus? I mean, you got out unscathed, so far as I could see. You didn't get ripped by the critics, and everyone loves Bette Midler, so she comes out standing. But the movie itself, pretty much thumbs down.
Well, I think that what happened, and actually I thought about this a little bit, but I haven't had a lot of time to be particularly analytical about it. But my feeling is that Disney made a business choice, and I feel like we made two movies. There was the movie that the Witches made.
Let me jump in for 1 second for those who didn't see it. Witches in Salem, Massachusetts, late 1600s. They're put to death for practicing witchcraft.
Right.
Now they're going to come back and come back to life by gobbling some kids up on Halloween.
Right. Exactly. Our way of living is to suck the life out of small children. Good family film.
You know, and what audience doesn't respond favorably to that?
It was just those first 5 minutes, and the rest of it is just us wreaking havoc on Salem, you know. But I think that Disney made it a business decision, and philosophically, I absolutely understand it. What they did was they decided to edit the movie for children, and it became a much lighter, youthful. My friend Adam, and my friend Adam again with the breast, said...
You know what it turns out? It turns out at the end of your career, you're 70 years old, he comes over and goes, you know, I'm straight, and have I enjoyed this?
Well, you know, stranger things have happened to me lately, so I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't even feel betrayed. But anyway, Adam told me that when he saw the movie that it was for embryos. He said it's very young, Sarah, because I hadn't seen it yet. I just think they decided to make a young film, and I think they wanted to release it in summer, and they wanted to appeal to an audience that wasn't necessarily being served in the summer with all the action movies.
Cool it, man! Weirdos! Weirdos! Hector!
All Hallows Eve has become a night of frolic, where children wear costumes and run amok.
A musk.
And I think in doing so, what they missed was Bette and me and Kathy and Jimmy doing some very, very dark, peculiar things that we worked incredibly hard creating. We were on the picture for 6.5 months. But the funny thing is about it, I don't feel any resentment. I don't feel anger. I don't feel cheated or, you know, edited unfairly. I feel like that can happen, and I've been up to this point unedited. I mean, really never been edited out of a movie or anything, but they just made a decision to make a film for youngsters, and it clearly didn't work as well as they'd hoped, but they certainly were behind it, I have to say. And you always hope for the best, but I don't, you know, things just don't work sometimes.
Another occupational hazard is a movie that you make that turns out one way, but you thought it was something entirely different when you first got into it. Striking Distances like this, it was supposedly for Robert De Niro at the beginning, and after a few script changes or whatnot, he drops out, then it becomes a Bruce Willis film. So by the time this thing hits the screen, it's gone through a whole lot of changes.
It's had some incarnations, yes. I guess Robert De Niro was involved in long before I was ever in my hands, and the thing that I found so compelling about this movie was, you know, obviously it was such a departure for me. I'd never done this sort of character. She was a mother. She's a mother. She's divorced. She's a police officer. She's incredibly driven by rules and regulations and all those things that I am not, you know. And the script that I had said yes to was not, in the end, what we shot. I think once you get into rehearsals, there are always changes. But I think in this case, I wasn't being very assertive, and I think that there were good changes, and there were changes that I felt I wasn't thrilled about. And it was hard for me because it was a testosterone-heavy set, and I was truly the only woman around, and I think that I did a disservice to sisterhood, and, you know, in not speaking up more and saying, but, you know, I feel this is inconsistent because it was such a new genre and a new arena for me, and I felt those people around me knew better. I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know the end result, and people are responding nicely to it, and it was #1 this weekend for, you know, its opening weekend, so it's not that I know better, it's just that sometimes things sit well with you, and sometimes you just don't feel totally victorious.
And pretty tough to buck the tide when Bruce Willis is the guy whose name is at the top of the marquee, because pretty much there's a formula that works in Bruce Willis films.
And he knows that formula better than anybody. I mean, he really knows that story.
This is the Pittsburgh Police Department. Pull the car over now and stop the engine. Stop the car now or I will shoot.
Take the whip. Take the whip.
All units, this is River Rescue 9221. We're in pursuit of a murder suspect heading west on the Railroad Service Road, mile 16 of the Monongahela. Suspect is driving a blue sedan and be armed and dangerous.
Send back up.
All units respond.
Hold it steady.
But that's not something that I know. And when, you know, it's like, it would be like me trying to teach a class in law. It makes no sense. I don't know law, I didn't go to college, I didn't go to law school. And I think I should have been better prepared, and I think that I'm used to really collaborative efforts. And that's just been my good fortune, and this wasn't that. And I have to be very careful, not just being diplomatic, but because I take a certain amount, I hold myself responsible to a degree. And I ultimately felt too, you know, this is Bruce's movie, and he has to call the shots, and I have to trust people. But it's just hard when you don't know people, strangers. Why would I trust a stranger with my apartment key? I wouldn't. But you, in a movie, you have this accelerated family life. You know, you trust people immediately, you like them, you have dinner with them, you have coffee with them in the morning, you see them at their worst and best times. So you lose your sense of objectivity in the middle of all that, and I certainly did, I think.
Okay, now here's the last thing, and I don't want any details of this, only how you've dealt with it. You seem like a good-natured soul. The tabloids have become part of your life in the last few years. Maybe not as much now, but there was a run there, and they talked about your romantic liaisons and whatnot. How have you been able to keep a sense of humor about that?
Well, I don't. I cry about it all the time. And you know what I do? I call them up, and I say, what are you talking about? I was never in Miami. And they think, of course, it's not me, and never... You know, I don't know. I don't deal with it well. I think there are people who have it a lot worse than me. I know there are people who are plagued by tabloids. I still take it personally. Some of the stuff I find truly funny, and other stuff I find hurtful because for some reason my mom ends up hearing about it. Not that she buys it, but, you know, someone will say, is it true that Sarah was in Italy last week with, you know, the Prime Minister of, you know, whatever, former Yugoslavia or whatever? And she'll say no, but, you know, I haven't heard from her in a while. And that's when it's most hurtful, is when my family reads things and are still, thankfully, naive enough to maybe think there's a shred of truth.
You know, maybe easy enough to say for someone who hasn't been victimized by it, but I've always thought that if it was in the tabloids only, that you pretty much have an out. You know, I'd
See,
say it's the Inquirer, it's whatever.
But it's when it's picked up.
See, that's just what I was going to say.
That's the
The
thing.
danger now is that that line has been blurred.
And I keep forgetting that, and people will call me and they'll say, my publicist will call me and she'll say, I have bad news, there's something in the tabloids about you, and I think, oh, great. And I say, okay. And I said, well, then we'll just pretend it doesn't exist. She said, unfortunately, I think, you know, AP has picked up on it, and so-and-so's column here and there, and I think, gosh, do I have a say in it? Because I feel I owe a certain amount, but I don't think that part that I have to give up.
See, the thing now is that you'll read, responding to tabloid reports
Right.
that she once dated a giraffe, Sarah Jessica Parker
I
said,
should be so lucky.
nonsense.
Right. So that they legitimize it somehow.
Yeah.
You know, it's just ludicrous. And I think that the more that we endorse that sort of journalism in any way, we pick it up, we carry it across the country, syndicate it, then we say that they're true journalists, and they're not. You know, it's silly. And my family gets hurt by it, and I don't like that. And then I have to go apologizing to everybody for hours, and it costs me a fortune on the phone.
Well, you see, you took care of it. If they all stay up late tonight,
Yes, they'll know.
think of
I'm
the
not
toll
responsible.
charges you have saved.
Exactly.
And that whole thing with Ernest Borgnine?
Not
Nonsense.
true.
2556 for a free consultation.
So, kids, Sarah Jessica Parker can be seen with Bruce Willis in striking distance at a theater near you. Time to get out of here.
It was nice to see you.
Thank you. Great to see you again.
It's my pleasure.
See you later.